Alright, so let us get into the panel. Let me, I guess, first off, just say thank you, everybody, for coming to this panel. And thank you all for either being a fan of visual novels, being bored on a Friday night, or wanting to get into. Or I hope there's someone out there who is really diehard into visual novels and is going to watch this or listen to this and go, I want to judge this person's beginner's choices, because I think that would be really, really funny of like someone watching my panel and just going, "Oh my god, why'd he pick this? What kind of schmuck would pick this for visual novels?" So hopefully that's not going to be the case. But without further ado, let's get started. Thank you all for coming, virtual Naka-Kon crowd of 2021. You're all very beautiful. I love all of your pictures. I appreciate that I am now not the only one with a not anime profile picture, so feeling a little less judged. But let's jump in to the panel, which is what we are in now. Visual novels for beginners. I am your host, Spencer Presley. And if someone here wants to do a quick background check on who I am just your average Midwest person who makes things. And yeah, so I do a weekly podcast all about Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, but that is not what this is about. This is going to be all about visual novels and where to get started with them. So, first up, visual novels. A little bit of personal history before we get into what they are. I've actually been, for context, I'm 27, and I've pretty much been playing visual novels for 9 years. Not really that long. And what's really funny about it is I've always known about them, but especially in the West over the last decade, it's been much, much less of a thing of, okay, hey, let's check out visual novels. Like, I was aware of them, cursory kind of knowledge, stuff like that, but never anything to the point where it was like, okay, I know what's going on, and blah, blah, blah. So, hold on here. I want to just shut up Discord just because if you guys have to keep hearing, or if you guys can hear the everyone getting in or getting out noise, that might be very annoying. So, I got into visual novels back through a certain PSP game we'll be talking about shortly, but my knowledge of it was pretty much like a lot of kind of Westerners of, okay, visual novels are something very popular overseas, definitely not a Western thing with video games. It was one of those genres that you always sort of knew existed, but never really could like kind of jump into. There wasn't a Jack and Daxter or a Mario of visual novels really growing up. And even now, like, there are a lot, and visual novels are more popular now than they've ever been, but I don't think anyone out there would say, oh my gosh, like, you haven't played this visual novel? Like, it's just such a broad and all sort of out there thing of, like, it's a genre with its own kind of taste on genres, and already has such a kind of steep learning curve in the sense of, like, no, not that reading is hard, but definitely visual novels do things differently, and like it's hard to just sort of throw someone into the deep end unless like they already think they'll be interested in the genre. But hey, what is this genre? So visual novels are a concept that started in the early 80s, actually, with a game that was kind of like a detective crime thriller developed by what is now known as Spike Chunsoft and published by Enix for the PC Engine. NES, been ported to tons of different stuff, never came out in the West, but what was really funny was it just kind of started this thing of, hey, what if we made a game and we took all the gameplay out that would require heavy visual programming and things like that, and just focused entirely on the story with minimal visual interactions or sort of things like that. So obviously in the 80s, you wouldn't have a lot of moving parts, things flashing. Obviously no one was going to be talking. But as the series and the genre kind of got more popular and spread to different developers, people were doing their own takes on it, people were doing different genres. You weren't just having like murder mysteries, you were having romances and things like that. And you were seeing it go on to different systems. So obviously PCs have always been a big thing, but consoles like the NES, the Famicom, the Genesis, the Sega CD, PlayStation, Saturn. Like, I can't think of a system that hasn't had a visual novel. And even ones that I'm like thinking of, like if I really had to think of like what the heck is a system without a visual novel, like maybe the GameCube, and even that I'm sure there's some Japanese GameCube visual novel I just don't know about. But like they were on the Xbox, they were on the PS2, PS3, and even systems that very rarely got them in the West, like the 3DS got visual novels. I don't know why you would want to play it on the 3DS. Oh, I mean, like, it's portable. Like, I kind of get it, but it was just one of those things, if you don't think of the system, like, I think it's safe to say, in the West, if you're playing a visual novel, and it's on something that's not a computer, you're either playing on the Nintendo Switch or the PlayStation Vita. And then people will probably make fun of you like me that you're still playing on the PlayStation Vita in 2021. But yeah, so it's been on various different consoles through various different developers, and thankfully over the last decade has become much, much more popular, but it's really kind of hard to like pick it of like what made it popular. Like, there's not that one game that like was the, oh, okay, here's the Call of Duty Modern Warfare for visual novels. Like, there's not that aha moment. So where to start for you if you're out there? First off, let's talk about systems, and just for the sake of your wallet and also kind of general convenience, I'm going to be sticking to currently and readily available software. So right now, if you wanted to play most visual novels out there, your best options are going to be computer, which can be like a laptop, Mac, whatever, PCs, and Steam has tons out there, like a lot of them, either whether it be fan games or like big games, you're going to see them all over on PCs. And Switch is a big one that I know is supported, but I have this weird thing of it might just be like my friend circles. The Nintendo Switch is a crazy popular system. I never see like almost anyone playing visual novels on them, but they keep releasing all the time, so clearly people are playing them. My inner circles, though, if I have any friends at all who are big visual novel fans, they play on the PlayStation Vita. PlayStation Vita actually in December of this year is going to be 10 years old, and it's funny, like literally yesterday, as of this panel, I bought a new PlayStation Vita game physically that was a visual novel, and it was just really, really crazy. Like, the system is still getting visual novels, even though, like, for the longest time, people have been like, oh, the Vita has no games, Vita has no support. Other systems that have it, Xbox gets a couple, but definitely not as much as like even like PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 gets a pretty good handful of visual novels, but very rarely do they get translated and brought over to the West outside of smaller indie titles. Something about, I don't know if it's just like the TV experience or people not really kind of being in there. But something about PlayStation 4, even though it is a really nice like HD system, you can like blow it up on your big screen. Just not a lot of developers or publishers really go after that. And I mean, it is basically like attaching a like jet engine to. It is basically like attaching a jet engine to the back of like a horse or something. Of like when you see, like when you're running a visual novel on like a PS4 or a PS5, it's just really, really crazy. Also, to the person who popped into the channel, do not worry, I have Discord muted, so I super did not hear you at all, so don't worry about that, and apologies if I was talking over you. I was not trying to be rude. So, other genres that are going to be a part of visual novel. Now, these are not by far all of them. This is just the most popular. If you are a fan of romance, and that can consist of like boys and girls, like playing as a boy, romancing other girls, playing as a girl, romancing other boys, or girl, boy, stuff like that. I mean, there's like stuff like Hatoful Boyfriend, which like, if you don't know about, is just you are a person in a pigeon academy, and if you want to date pigeons, there you go. Like, romance is a very, very broad spectrum. I think even on phones, I really wish I really, really wish I remembered the name of this. There's a phone visual novel that is you dating a anime horseman, and when I say anime horseman, it's a horse, and at the end of his neck is just a hot anime guy's face. So, like, the sky's the limit for romance. You can do anything or anyone you want. Next up is horror. Definitely not one you see as much, but dark horror can be sort of like wrapped in with suspense and drama as well, like I have listed there, but bodily horror, kind of like scarier stuff like that. If you're like someone who finds himself enjoying like a good horror novel or a horror movie, there are definitely lots of series out there that might kind of catch your interest. Oh yes, Maddie Hatter saying really really good visual novel is Alice in the Country of Hearts, and yeah, that is one that I've heard a lot of good stuff for. Other ones kind of going in with like suspense. It doesn't necessarily have to be like horror. It can be like trying to be like solving detective stories, similar to with dramas and thrillers of like if you've ever thought of something like it could be a book or a movie, definitely not necessarily like an interactive medium like a game. Visual novels are a lot more open to kind of experimenting with this and whatever that means, in the sense of like, okay, are we talking about like oh no, the image. Will you obey? Oh my god. Oh, why did I bring that up? I could have gone through the whole panel without seeing the image of the anime horseman. It had to be shown, Devin. No, Devin. It had to be shown. It had to be shown. There's a reason you need to be looking at the Discord chat. So I'm going to be going into recommendations. If people out there in the Discord chat want to send me recommendations, whether I know about them or not, let me know. But these are just some personal recommendations for, assuming you have these platforms, legally or not. These are ones I really, really think are great jumping on points, whether you've touched the series for a little bit or have never touched visual novels at all. Devin, please never apologize for posting Anime Horseman. Don't worry about it. So, the first game I'm going to recommend may seem like a really weird choice, and that's Persona 3 Portable. So, this, without me knowing it, was the very first visual novel I ever played way back, I think it was like 2009, maybe 2010 in the States. And Persona 3 Portable, on the outside, is a sort of rearranged version of Persona 3, which released on the PlayStation 2 a couple of years previously. Now, what they did to basically kind of condense this massive dozens and dozens and dozens of hours long RPG into the PSP was they had to make concessions, and they were like, okay, we can do visuals similar to the PS2, but it's going to be just so much space with all the voice data, location, 3D models, and things like that, that it was just going to be hard to really kind of fit it all in and have it make sense. So, what the geniuses at Atlas ended up doing was they took all of these social sim elements you normally get in your Persona game of throughout the day, calendar events are happening, you're going to different locations, you're talking to people, you're going to school, you're maybe getting a job, seeing what's going on, progressing the story like that. This is told through basically menus similar to what you would see in visual novels of picking locations, see where you're going, lots of menus, very, very heavy on character portraits and stuff like that, while keeping the JRPG gameplay of when it is the midnight hour, you're going in, it is a 3D dungeon crawl, you're controlling your character like that. So, interesting pick for this one of, say you love RPGs, but you're not sure if you love visual novels. Persona 3 Portable is really great because for me, even without me knowing it at the time, it's half visual novel, half RPG, all good time. And personally for me, and I know some people might find this contentious, I think this is the best way to play the story of Persona 3. The only problem with it, it's only legally available on the PSP or the PlayStation Vita through backwards compatibility. So if you have a digital copy, you can play it like that. I guess you could also do Vita TV, but that's its own subsect. But obviously emulation's a thing, but legal ways to give Atlas money, this is kind of your best bet. We are in the 25th anniversary of Persona this year, though, so hopefully this game gets a port and keeps its visual novel roots. I'd be very, very excited about that, just because I know not a lot of people really either have or want to bust out a PSP in the year 2021. So, first recommendation, kind of a stretch just because of how laid back it is, but most of these are going to be available on multiple platforms, so hence the sad face. Now, next one is either going to make you cheer or sad that I included this on here, but I just had to include Danganronpa. So, Danganronpa, outside of being a fantastic way to say dang old Ron Paul or whatever you want, is a visual novel developed by Spike Chunsoft and in the West was originally published by NIS America and is just such a acid trip of a visual novel. And quick little story for me of how I got into the series. So there are currently 4 Danganronpa games. There's Danganronpa 1, Danganronpa 2, Danganronpa V3, and Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls. Ultra Despair Girls is its own thing and kind of a third-person game in that own right, so I won't be talking about it, but please, if you enjoy these games, do not sleep on Ultra Despair Girl. Next up, how I got started with it, and just goes to show how weird and just awesome the series is. I got started with the second game. So at the time, I was writing reviews for a friend's blog, and basically they got a code for the game on the Vita, and nobody wanted to play it. And it was the second game, maybe no one else had played the first one, or it was just at a busy time. And I was sitting there in college really, really bored, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. Because, I mean, I know it's a sequel, but I knew, like, I didn't really need to play the first one to enjoy it. And I got so hooked into the world of Danganronpa 2 that, no joke, at the time there was a moment in that game where I am in a class trial trying to decide which one of my classmates killed the other one, that I legitimately was headphones plugged into my Vita so hard that the school went into lockdown because they thought they had seen a shooter on campus. And it wasn't until I saw my second police officer with an AK strolling by me that I thought, it's really weird and quiet how the school is going on right now. So, I don't know if this would work as a back-of-the-box quote, but boy, I really wish I could have said, Danganronpa, a series so good, you'll forget you're in a school shooting for it. So, what is Danganronpa, you may be asking? Danganronpa is a series that is kind of a genre blend of many different ways of adventure genre, searching around, first-person puzzles, visual novel elements, life sim elements, and horror. So the basic premise of all 3 games, though, is that you are playing as a student of Hope's Peak Academy, and the only way to escape or graduate is you and various other students have to either kill another student and get away with it through a class trial, and during that class trial, if the killer is not caught, they get to graduate, but all of the other students are executed. So the only way to survive being in the world of Hope's Peak Academy is that you have to catch the killer and have them executed instead. So either way, unless everyone can agree not to kill each other, you are just stuck here forever, or you have a chance of getting murdered because you are either a victim of the murderer or you get murdered by trying to murder. It is very, very crazy. The characters are fantastic. I cannot recommend all of them enough. One of the great games I've, check it out with the English dub. The Japanese dub is also great, but the English voice cast for every game is just such a awesome, awesome thing to experience. Personal favorites, I would say, no matter where you're playing this for, it originally started, the first 2 games were on PSP, but that was only in Japan. There are emulated versions, though. But to play this game, if you want in English officially, you can play it on the PlayStation Vita, you can play it on the PlayStation 4, PC, or recently, the first 2 games have been released on iOS and Androids, with V3 eventually going to be coming. I would personally say play this either on, console, though. The phone ports are fine, and they don't really have any super negative aspects to it, but it's one of those things of you want to kind of experience it on a bigger screen. It is very heavy on presentation. That's why I enjoyed playing it on the Vita so much, just because it had the touch features there. It was originally actually obviously it was originally intended for PSP, but it had a lot of specialties to the Vita there. It is a very good kind of cinematic experience, and the class trials alone are almost like watching a movie where you get to interact, that everything is voiced, everything just feels so perfectly paced. There's mini games, there are detective elements. It is just such a crazy, crazy mixture, and the only thing I can say is try and go into them knowing as little as possible. That's almost with all of these games, but try to go into them knowing as little as possible. Spoiler free is the best way to go for this one, especially just because the story is so crazy. Alright, next up. And also, for anyone else who may have joined new, if you all have any questions or comments or things they want to yell at me or recommendations, please throw them in the Discord channel as well. Oh man, what a great what a great goof I just made here. I didn't change the text on that one. But no, this is not Danganronpa again. This is the house Infada Morgana, and also a good reason of why you get your panel a little bit more fully proof checked, but also juggling a full-time job is hard. Either way, the house Infada Morgana, I don't know why I find that so funny that I kept it Danganronpa, is really weird. So this is one of like if Danganronpa is like pretty popular online and in the world, if you find someone who knows what the House in Fata Morgana is, they're like legit. They're like a okay, you know your stuff because this is a small team that had made this in Japan many years ago for PC, and just recently, I think it was 2019, it finally got a English release on consoles with PlayStation Vita and PS4. It had released a couple of years prior on PC, but this console version was really special of basically compiled all of the short stories, every sort of additional content the PC version had ever got, all into one package. Everything was widescreen, 4K, everything you would want in like a port, and is really nice. Nintendo Switch is getting a version of House and Fata Morgana, but the current release date is not known in the West. I know it's going to be soon. It comes out in March in Japan. Dream Daddy. Dream Daddy's a weird one. Dream Daddy is like... Dream Daddy is an interesting recommendation of like... I don't know why. In my brain, I always think of like Dream Daddy as like... I think it's like one of those ones of I always have a hard time taking Dream Daddy seriously, but no, like it is a good visual novel like recommendation. I think like that's like one of those like weird ones of like you gotta like Dream Daddy is either someone's first visual novel or you gotta make sure you find someone in like the right state for it. But yeah, Dream Daddy is like such a weird thing of I heard so much about that game when that came out, but I've not heard that name in years. But no, good, very good, very good recommendation for Dream Daddy, and it's on a ton of stuff. So, House and Fata Morgana, quick summary if I can, and another one of you will just not know what's going on in this game, and the less you know about it, the better. So, geez, for the love of everything holy, please do not spoil yourself on this game. The House and Fata Morgana has you playing as a faceless, nameless entity that has magically appeared in this cursed mansion. And this cursed mansion is sort of like a hub or like a twilight zone of sorts of looking back and peering through its past owners and going back in time and seeing at everyone's twisted fates of what happened, ranging from children hundreds of years ago and the stories that they told, and like lovers who were in the house or people who had stumbled across it, and how you yourself eventually ended up getting into this position. All I can say is this is like one of the greatest visual novels of all time. The House in Fata Morgana is something that is just like it's very special. Of like its music is unlike anything out there. Its visuals are super striking. The art is amazingly detailed. Everything behind the writing is just insanely well thought out. And what's great is like it starts as a game of like, okay, you're clearly a mystery with like lots of dark elements behind it, but throughout like the like dozens and dozens of hours this game has to offer because of all the like story it wraps in it, I found myself laughing, I found myself crying, I found myself physically like disturbed and like disgusted. Like there are so many different emotional stories that all weave into this story that never feel overly drawn out or overly long. Like everything found a way to be super well connected, and also just like give you a story that like I've never ever really seen attempted, and in such a really like progressive way. And it sucks like I can't get into any level of like spoiler because like this game, especially coming from Japanese devs, it's like, oh my god, like how have people not talked about this more? Of like it does things for even like representation I never would have guessed, and like talking about psychological and physiological problems, and like dealing with family, and what does it mean to like get over guilt and pain. And it just is something I cannot describe enough, and also I don't ever want to describe because I just want people to just sit down and experience this game. It is amazing, amazing, amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. Clannad by Crump is very, very good. No, sorry, Crump did not make Clannad. Crump just suggested it. I'm pretty sure Crump is not the developer of it, but yeah. So Clannad is a very, very popular one, and actually one of like I've known about forever, but just haven't played myself. The story behind why I've not, I've been aware of like it's very popular. It's on PS4. I mean, it's on like everything. Like it got ported to a bajillion places. I basically got catfished though by Clannad of Tokyo Game Show way, way, way back when. I think it was like 2018 or something. They had a build of Clannad in English. Like there's been an English translation of Clannad forever, but on PlayStation Vita. It was just at a booth, and they were like, "Oh, it's coming soon. It's already done. We just gotta like put it out there." But whatever happened, the publisher deal fell through or something, it just never manifested, and I was waiting for a Vita version for so long, and I just never got it. There is a Vita version, but only in Japanese, and my Japanese is good enough to, like, talk to a, like, third grader, but definitely not old enough to, but definitely not good enough to get me in with, an entire visual novel. I would never disrespect a story like that by having my broken Japanese experience all the way through. Another really, really good one and good recommendation by Maddie was Corpse Party. So yeah, Corpse Party is another really crazy horror one. It's like visuals are like top-down RPG Maker sprites with just fantastically frightening and awesome music, but like the visuals are great. Like Corpse Party is another one that I kind of wanted to put in here, but it's sort of so spread out. It's sort of hard to like kind of lump into. It's not just one thing to experience, and it's also not just like it's a great one of like anyone you can play, whether it be the PSP games, the 3DS games. They're now on Switch. They're on PC. They're on Vita. They're such awesome games. Not a lot of bad visual novel game I will be talking about here. Caddy, thank you for joining as well in saying, yes, we were talking about Persona 3 Portable, and I'm glad that is your favorite game of all time. Something I did not give a shout out to, but I'm glad you mentioned, but we are talking about the developer shortly. AI the Somnium File, another really, really good recommendation on PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC as well. Another one of just like super great story, super crazy. The less you know, the better. Jump into it. So, in the vein of why are you recommending these names with absolutely terrible titles, we have Utawari Ramona. And Utawari Ramona is such a weird recommendation for many, many reasons. Number one, it's a trilogy. There are more than 3 games, but it is part of this trilogy of stories, starting with Prelude to the Fallen, Mask of Deception is next, and Mask of Truth is the finale of all 3 of them. What makes Utawari Ramona really interesting is it started actually as a soft-core H game back in the day on PC, and was very, very popular in the underground circuits for a while. Got a PlayStation 2 port back in the day, I think even a PSP port maybe, and the first game was just so popular. It ended up getting multiple spin-offs, had anime adaptations, but what's kind of funny about it was in the West, we never really got a taste of it until Atlas published the second and third game. So the reason behind this is when the second game came out, Mask of Deception, in the West on PlayStation Vita and PlayStation 4, we only got the second and third game because the first game was never made in that kind of current style. It was definitely a very early 2000s, kind of rough around the edges game. Before, though, I get into the release of why it was such a messy release and sort of what happened, Utawari Ramona takes place in this fantasy world of you are a man, wait for it, has amnesia, has a mask stuck to his face, has no idea why, and is basically his life is saved by this village, and your job is to, at the start, basically kind of acclimate yourself to living in this world and sort of getting attached to these villagers, learning and sort of like starting to like like kind of like loving your life as it is until dramatic events ensue and spoilers. 3 games of drama, death, and love happen. So what's really interesting, though, about Utawari Ramona is kind of like Persona 3 Portable, this is not just a visual novel. This is a visual novel that is also a strategy RPG. Now, while Persona is definitely way more like 50-50 and probably like maybe like 60-40 when we get into how much is actual gameplay, Utawari Ramona is definitely heavy on the visual novel. It's like 70-30, and 30 is gameplay. But what's interesting, though, about it is there's not a lot of games like this that are like, hey, we are super investing into our story. We're very getting into the characters. All the games are voice acted. Like, all of these, like, basically, like, showing off everything you want from a standard visual novel in terms of story being good, presentation being good, but also having a really interesting take on gameplay of just like, hey, here is a strategy RPG. And it is a full system. You have party members, you have equipment, you have chains. Like, the battle systems are interesting. They're all unique. And just really cool. Very underrated. Unfortunately, kind of going back to the releases in the West. So, Atlas in America, and also in Europe, published the second and third game in the trilogy because those games were the only ones really available on modern platform. The first was only available on older platforms like PC and whatnot like that. But the developer behind it had found so much success with the new games coming on newer platforms that they took the visual style from the second and third game in the trilogy and remade the first game in that style to kind of keep it all a little bit more uniform and able to play it. So even in Japan, it released as 2-3-1, and Prelude to the Fallen actually just came out last year. I think it was last May in 2020 by NIS America. And by some absolutely crazy miracle, we even got it digitally only in the West on Vita. The only kind of problem with this game, recommending it, and this just happened a couple of weeks back, Atlas has actually delisted the PlayStation versions of the second and third game. So now if you go and try and play them all on consoles, on PC they're all still up there through a different publisher, but on consoles no one has published them, so you can only play the first in the trilogy legally, unless you track down physical copies, which are getting a lot harder to find and starting to get pricier. And even the one that came out last year, Utawari Ramona Prelude to the Fallen, is starting to go for like over $100, and that just came out. So it's like, video game collecting is tough, visual novel collecting is tough. Like, if you're a digital person, like, there's not as much to really worry about there, especially if you have PCs with like Steam sales. But yeah, if you're a physical collector and love visual novels, you probably know the struggle of hunting down some of those really rare and obscure things. Appreciate the water break. Crumple, we'll be talking about 999 in a bit. Maddie, though, bringing up a great point. Oh, and Ray making me feel bad. I know I should have included this, but Maddie bringing up a great point. The Neptunia games, giving a shout out. They've definitely got visual novel elements with the storytelling, but I kind of put the Neptunia games a little bit closer to RPG than visual novel, just because of how much kind of exploring there still is. That being said, though, if you enjoy really kind of like wacky and out there stories, the Hyperdimension Neptunia games are really fun. Caddy, though, says, how could I forget my favorite visual novel series? Ace Attorney. Okay, so Crucify Me time. There's no Ace Attorney mentioned in this panel, but yes, Ace Attorney, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, Miles Edgeworth, any of these games, please check them out. They are courtroom dramas, published and made by Capcom. Really great. Started all the way back on Game Boy Advance. I didn't include it here because I don't actually have that much personal investment into the series, just because I was never huge into DS visual novels. I mean, DS, I wasn't that huge into playing at the time. I wasn't really into visual novels at the time. And it's something I'm definitely interested in as a series to kind of check out. I know the history, but I've yet to actually like kind of dive in and check it out myself. I am very excited for the Great Detective Ace Attorney game, which we are supposed to finally be getting in the collection soon. Leaked all over the place, but we still don't have a actual official release date. Now, I say I haven't played games like Ace Attorney, which are like incredibly popular, and next I'm going to basically be recommending the Neon Genesis Evangelion of visual novels. So another one of, hey, if you know Muv-Luv, A, I'm sorry, and B, thank you. Muv-Luv is such a bag of worms to describe and kind of recommend to people, but it had to be included for many reasons. But I'm going to talk so much, I gotta do a verbal water break for this one. Okay. Muv-Luv. Oh my gosh. Where do you start? Muv-Luv, specifically Muv-Luv Alternative, is part of a trilogy of visual novels and other games. It's spread out. It's got animes and other things for it. But specifically right now we're talking about the Muv-Luv trilogy. And to make it even more confusing, it's a trilogy of visual novels split into 2 games. Muv-Luv and Muv-Luv Extra are in a game called Muv-Luv, and Muv-Luv Alternative is the finale of them. Finale kind of in quotes, but you'll understand in a minute. What's really interesting about this series, if you don't know, Muv-Luv is the highest rated, and still is to this day, highest rated visual novel of all time, according to people on Visual Novel Database. So basically, this is a site of just hardcore ride or die visual novel fans, and they are just all here to basically, alright, it's a compilation. Even if it's released only in certain areas on certain platforms, they compile everything and anything that might be a visual novel. And for some, I don't even know how long it's been there, but yeah, Muv-Luv Alternative has just been the highest rated of all time, and it's really, really crazy. But what the heck is Muv-Luv? Muv-Luv is a trilogy of 3 very, very different games. And right now, the only ways to play it in English are on the PlayStation Vita and PC. The PlayStation Vita version barely happened, but we don't have enough time to get into that story. But boy, that's a great story to tell of how that almost didn't happen. Long story short, folks, we're not talking about it because we don't have time. Be very, very cautious of ever backing visual novel Kickstarters, because those can bite you in the butt really hard. But Muv-Luv, what the heck is it? The first game, your typical anime. I'm a guy, I got a lot of very well-endowed friends, some flat, some pretty round, but you know what? Their personalities range from stereotype to stereotype, and we're just gonna have a dang old good time enjoying high school life. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Muv-Luv Extra. The same story, but out of nowhere, the world is invaded by aliens, and you are now tasked for whatever reason in this future society to start getting into these giant mechs and defending the Earth. Muv-Luv Alternative is the what-if version of what if you went back in time, and basically everything that could go wrong in the story of Muv-Luv Extra goes horrifyingly wrong. And when I mean horrifyingly wrong, I mean like the worst nightmare fuel you could ever assume happened. Like, so the ties to Eva are very, very intentional here, at least from like a fan's perspective. Another one of go in knowing as little as possible. Know that the first Muv-Luv is super anime generic trash, but you gotta get through it for the lore and the context and the bonds. And if you can make it through that first game, the second and especially the third are just insanely crazy, insanely inspirational. The storytelling alone is just amazing, horrifying, and gut-wrenching all at the same time, and was something of like, oh cool, I like giant mechs, I like Ava, let's give this a shot, to oh my god, oh my god, wow. It's a lot. It's just a lot to process. But hey, speaking of emotionally processing things that are hard to do, the Zero Escape series, otherwise known as the less popular Danganronpa franchise that Spike Chunsoft developed. So, this is made by the same people... Excuse me. This is made by the same people who made AI the Somnium File. And this started initially as a DS visual novel called 999. 9 doors, 9 persons, 9... I think I messed it up. It was like 9 rooms, 9 persons, 9 doors. Terrible name, but you know what? The series isn't known for getting much better. The second game is called Virtue's Last Reward, and the third game is called Zero Time Dilemma. All very, very different takes on the escape room genre, but they are all part of a interweaving trilogy of, oh my god, these almost didn't happen, but long and short of it, very, very interesting stories, interesting cast as well. Another one of all 3 games I think have fantastic, fantastic, fantastic dubs, but the way to play these games, if you are able to do it, do not go and try and find the original on DS. Do not play the phone version. Play the Nonary games first. The Nonary games is the remake of the first game, entirely voice acted. You're missing a couple of puzzle elements just because they removed the touchscreen features with the DS stuff. But next is Virtue's Last Reward, which is its follow-up, which originally was just on PlayStation Vita and DS, and now is on a bunch more stuff. So this is on, all this trilogy is on the Vita, the 3DS, the PlayStation 4, and PC. And Zero Time Dilemma is its crazy, crazy, crazy finale. Another one of go in knowing as little as possible, but it is a escape room scenario of really wacky characters, crazy cases of, oh my god, we all have amnesia, how did we get here, how do we escape, lots of really interesting puzzles. Like, while this doesn't have like the interactive court elements of Danganronpa, the puzzles and just the kind of ways that everything loops into each other and the branching timelines, and this is one of those rare games of, outside of the fact that you want to see every side of the story, where you just look at, okay, well, what happens if I did this, or what happens if I went with her instead of him? It's got lots of elements of going back, finding out what's going on, and another one, cannot recommend it enough. Thankfully, is super, super dirt cheap. The only little PDA, little heads up, PDA definitely wouldn't work here, but the only little heads up I would say, don't play this on 3DS. If you can, are you having a sick joke? Maybe do that. It's the worst looking. It looks like trash. It runs like trash. It sounds like trash. Please play this on anything that's not the 3DS. It's really bad, I promise. It's really, really rough. There are so many better ways to experience this game. Just because it's on the 3DS doesn't mean you should try it. So that's one request I have for all of you. Next up, we only got a couple left. The recos, but the Spirit Hunter series. This one is less of a series and more of a duology, but their names are so kind of out there, I had a harder time kind of explaining it. So, Spirit Hunter is a just straight up horror visual novel. You are a detective in Deathmark, and there is a sequel which is called NG. It's more of like a in-universe sequel and less of a full-on continuation. But these games are all available on PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. If you were a fan of horror, if you were a fan of suspense, if you were a fan of detective stories, these two I cannot recommend enough. The art is fantastic. It was developed by Experience, who is actually primarily known for doing first-person dungeon crawling games, but their joint into making this pair of visual novels was just fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. The art is just super chilling, really, really horrifying, and just awesome games that I'm really glad came here, just because there's never enough love for horror, so the more horror you can get in your life, the better. But if you're also not a fan of horror, please avoid this. This will not change your mind. Speaking of horror, let's talk about everything, because I can't include everything. I don't have enough time. I've almost talked for the entire hour, and that's just how the world works. But hey, the point of this slide, if you are looking at this, if you're coming away from this, if you're saying, hey, X game looks interesting, let's give that a shot. Try something new. Try something interesting. Do you think you like action, but you maybe are a fan of romance on the side? Give some like boy love stuff a try. Give some anime recommendations a try. Try the horse game. Try Famicom Detective Club. Nintendo was publishing not one but 2 visual novels of remakes of NES games. We're living in a crazy time. There are games releasing all the time in the visual novel sphere. ranging from all sorts of different genres, all sorts of different publishers, and like I just cannot recommend enough. Whether it be stuff like really really popular series like Code Realize, Caller X Mollis, Read Only Memories 2064, Valhalla, Man Dying in His Room Coughing. Try all sorts of stuff. Try big games. Try medium games. Try small games. Try weird indie games. Bottom left corner, if you're looking at the screen, Pantsu Hunter. Really, really. Oh my god, yeah. Itch.io, yes, good one. Like there are so many different types of indies out there, making, publishing, or just trying to do their own like visual novels all the time, and the community is only getting bigger as every day passes. So feel free to branch out. Try not to kind of pigeonhole yourself into one genre. Like I started with Danganronpa, and I probably buy more Otome games than I will ever actually get the chance to play. But I just enjoy the genre so much that I want to support it and play everything and anything I can. But like going back to even crazy stuff, like an indie game that I included on here, Pantsu Hunter, is on just about everything. Looks like the pinnacle like '90s anime thing. Has like the pinnacle like '90s anime aesthetic, but it is like a point and click visual novel adventure game of you are just a guy who has all of these girls fawning after him, but all he wants is to find their panties, and that's like literally it. But ranging from like silly stuff like that to really serious stories. Shout out to Synergia, the cyberpunk visual novel I was actually referring to earlier that I just picked up. That's coming to consoles really, really soon. So, like, doesn't matter where you play, whether it be your phone, PlayStation 4, Vita, Switch, PC, play them wherever you can. There's a huge community out there. You just gotta find them. Obviously, there's not like one general hub that's kind of the best place for it, but it's one of those things that if it's something you might be interested in, give it a chance. Don't let the reading scare you away. Reading's not gonna hurt you. Probably, I promise. But yes, give it a shot. It's a series that definitely always needs more love, but I'm glad that at least people were interested enough to maybe watch a panel at a virtual anime convention about visual novels. So hopefully this gave you a bit of a kind of idea for where you want to jump off at of like what kind of games you may or may not be interested in. So the final slide, I'm pretty sure that's just catch up. She's just very sad that we have to come to an end. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for enjoying the panel. Thank you all for just being here, being interested in the series, whether you were a visual novel fan, whether you are hoping to be, or whether you're just sending pictures of anime horsemen in the chat. Like, thank you all for coming here, being interested. If you have any favorites you want to give a shout out, please type them out now for any last minute recommendations. But for the most part, that is the panel. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to now unmute Discord, so hopefully that will not have a room of people yelling at me for why did you have it muted for so long. But hey, thank you all for being in here, and shout outs to everyone at Naka-Kon who helped make this happen and was just being extra cool. Alright. That is the screen gone. Hopefully I'm still here. Okay, I am still here. Thank you all again so much. I really, really loved getting to talk about visual novels. I talk a lot about RPGs in my day-to-day life, and I don't get to gush about this nearly as often as I would like. I wish I could be doing this with you all in person. My plan was to do this last year, actually, and have all of my games there. I was going to have them kind of like on display of like just like look at how many this dumb weeb has. Like there are so many things out there. I wish I could show you all more footage and kind of get a better grip of, but hopefully that came across. Thank you all. You are all way too nice to have A, listened to me rant for so long, and B, it let me include other things for it. So thank you all so much. Thank you to the staff. Thank you everyone in here who I am sure is going to enjoy the rest of your convention. And hey, if you are here, please, please, please stick around for the next panel. We're talking, I'm 99.9% sure about big robots, and everyone likes big robots. So, yeah, enjoy the next panel. I will awkwardly now mute myself. But no, actually, I guess I could like promote, like, if you want to find me. I have a YouTube channel. You can just search my name. It's Spencer Presley. Twitter is really easy. It's Torchwood4SP. But yeah, that's about it. So that's where people can find me. Thank you all for having me babble on. Goodbye. Thank you. I love you. Even though I've only texted and talked to you all just for a little bit. Goodbye. Awkward ending.